Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something right now. The biggest breakthrough you're looking for is not coming from more hustle. It's not coming from more grind. It's not coming from more late nights and early mornings. You've been trying to do this thing in your own strength, and you're tired. You're frustrated. You're worn out. And that's because you've got the order wrong. Divine alignment precedes breakthrough. This principle is not just spiritual, it's universal, and it applies to every area of your life. You can work harder, get smarter, build systems, and study strategies. But if you are out of alignment with divine order, you will always find you're striving more than succeeding. You may experience small wins here and there, but sustained transformation and lasting impact only come when your life is aligned with the one who designed it. There is a difference between movement and progress. You can be busy and still be barren. You can be in motion but not moving forward. That's what happens when your plans are misaligned with your purpose. When you're chasing goals God never assigned to you, you will always feel like something's missing, even when you succeed. True breakthrough doesn't begin with what you do, it begins with what you prioritize. And nothing matters more than being in divine alignment. Alignment is about more than just belief, it's about order. It's about putting first things first. You cannot put success, money, relationships, or even personal growth ahead of your relationship with the Creator and expect to walk in the fullness of your potential. When God is not first, everything else is out of place, even if it looks good on the outside. But when God is first, everything begins to click because you are now flowing with the current of your divine design, not against it. The reason many people feel stuck isn't because they lack talent or opportunity. It's because they lack alignment. They're trying to live life their way and still expect God's favor to follow. But it doesn't work that way. You don't get divine results from human control. You can't expect God to bless what He never told you to build. Divine alignment means surrendering your agenda in exchange for His assignment. It means making His voice the loudest voice in your life. Alignment shifts your posture. It changes how you move, how you plan, how you make decisions. You no longer react based on fear or pressure. You respond based on peace and purpose. That peace isn't the absence of problems, it's the presence of order. When you are aligned with God, storms may come, but they don't shake you. Delays may happen, but they don't derail you. You have confidence, not just because of your skills, but because of who you're walking with. It's easy to get caught up in performance, especially in today's world. You can be grinding 247, measuring your value by your productivity, chasing approval through achievements. But divine alignment doesn't measure success by how much you produce. It measures it by how closely you follow. Are you in step with God's timing? Are you aligned with His priorities? Are you building what He told you to build? Or are you just busy doing what looks good to others? Breakthrough is not just an event, it's a shift. And that shift begins internally. Before doors open around you, something has to align within you. Your mind, your heart, your spirit, they need to come into agreement with your divine assignment. That's when things start to happen. That's when you stop forcing outcomes and start flowing in purpose. The right people show up. The right opportunities find you. The favor that felt random now makes sense because it's flowing from alignment. Many people pray for breakthrough, but continue to live in misalignment. They ask for clarity, but ignore correction. They want results, but not realignment. You cannot skip alignment and expect acceleration. You must be willing to stop, examine, and adjust. Where are you out of order? What priorities need to be rearranged? What voices have you elevated above God's voice? These questions aren't always comfortable, but they are necessary. God is the source, not just a supplement. This truth changes everything about how you approach life purpose and success. Too many people treat God like a side item on their plate, something to sprinkle in when things get tough or when they feel stuck. But God was never meant to be an accessory to your life. He is the source of life itself. Every breath, every opportunity, every ounce of strength you have flows from Him. When you truly grasp that, your mindset shifts from self-dependence to divine dependence. When you see God as the source, you stop living in survival mode. You stop scrambling for validation and hustling for resources as if your future depends on other people. You begin to operate with a sense of peace and confidence because you know the one who supplies your needs is unlimited in power, wisdom, and provision. People may fail you. Systems may shift. Economies may crash. But your source remains constant. He doesn't run out. He doesn't get tired. He's not reacting to circumstances. He's sovereign over them. The problem is, many people say God is their source, but live like their job is their provider, or like their bank account is their safety net, or like their talent is their only ticket to success. They rely on networking strategies and grinding harder as if their destiny is entirely in their hands. That mindset breeds anxiety, burnout, and fear. But when you recognize that God is the source, it frees you from the pressure of being your own savior. You no longer feel like it's all on you because you know who it all comes from. Treating God like a supplement leads to spiritual malnutrition. Just like vitamins can't make up for a poor diet, prayer can't compensate for a life that's disconnected from God's presence. You can't just add a little scripture here, a quick prayer there, and expect supernatural strength. Power comes from staying connected to the source, not occasionally visiting it. It's not about moments of inspiration. It's about a lifestyle of intimacy. When God is your source, your time with Him isn't optional, it's essential. When God is at the center, everything you do is fueled by purpose. You don't just work for a paycheck. You work as a steward of His assignment. You don't just build a business. You build a platform for impact. You don't just manage your time. You manage your calling. The source determines the supply. And the closer you stay to the source, the more clearly you hear, the more boldly you move, and the more gracefully you endure. Seeing God as the source also changes how you handle increase. You don't worship the blessing. You worship the one who gave it. You don't take credit for outcomes. You give glory to the origin. Pride can't survive when you understand that every good thing in your life didn't start with you. It came through you, but it didn't come from you. That perspective keeps you grounded, grateful, and generous. You give freely because you know the source doesn't dry up. When God is the source, you stop chasing after what He's already assigned to you. You stop hustling for what grace has already made available. You begin to realize that favor isn't something you manufacture. It's something you walk in when you stay aligned with the one who holds your future. There's a difference between earning and receiving. The world teaches you to earn everything. God teaches you to receive what has already been prepared. Operating from source, awareness brings stillness in chaos. It brings direction in uncertainty. It brings joy even in trials. Because you are no longer tethered to circumstances. You are rooted in the source. That root determines your fruit. That source defines your identity. It informs your decisions. It becomes your standard. You don't lower your values to get ahead, because your supply doesn't come from people, it comes from God. Putting God first brings clarity and direction. In a world full of noise, opinions, pressure, and confusion, clarity has become a rare commodity. People are chasing answers, searching for purpose, and making decisions out of fear, desperation, or comparison. But when you truly put God first, not in word, but in the order of your priorities, everything else starts to come into focus. The fog begins to lift, not because life gets easier, but because your spirit is aligned with the one who sees the end from the beginning. Clarity doesn't come from overthinking or from gathering more information. It comes from alignment. It comes from being still enough, quiet enough, surrender to hear God's voice above the noise. When He is first in your life, His voice becomes louder than your fear, stronger than your doubt, and more powerful than the confusion around you. Direction doesn't come by force, it comes through flow. And flow is a byproduct of putting God at the center of your decisions. Most people aren't lacking vision because they don't have goals. They're lacking vision because they've allowed distractions to cloud their focus. They're trying to make decisions based on logic, but logic without spiritual alignment leads to limitation. When God is first, you begin to see differently. You don't just see what is. You start to perceive what could be. You don't just look at problems. You recognize patterns. You start discerning doors instead of chasing dead ends. That's what happens when the eyes of your spirit are open. When you put God first, direction becomes less about what you want to do and more about what you're created to do. You stop asking, what's the fastest way to get there? And start asking, what's the right way to go? The world pushes for speed, but the Spirit leads with strategy. You may not always understand the route, but when you trust the navigator, you walk in confidence even in unfamiliar territory. You don't panic when things don't according to your plan because your trust is not in the plan. It's in the planner. Clarity also means you stop living from a place of reaction. You stop responding to pressure and start responding to purpose. That purpose becomes your compass. And that compass doesn't point you toward comfort. It points you toward calling. Putting God first redefines your why. It shifts your motives. You no longer move to prove something to others. You move because you're led by conviction. That level of clarity simplifies your life. It helps you say no without guilt, yes without hesitation, and wait without anxiety. God's direction is not just about your next step. It's about your posture. When you're submitted, you're guided. When you're surrendered, you're protected. When you're aligned, you're accelerated. Too many people are begging for guidance while resisting submission. They want clarity without commitment. But it doesn't work like that. Putting God first is not just a spiritual slogan. It's a structural shift. It's a decision to let His voice have a final say, not your feelings, not your friends, your fears. The clarity that comes from putting God first is not always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet assurance. Sometimes it's a deep sense of peace. It's not always about hearing an audible voice. It's about cultivating an internal knowing. You just know when something is right. You know when to walk away, when to move forward, when to stay planted. You're no longer tossed around by opinions because you've anchored your identity and your direction in something eternal. Putting God first doesn't mean you'll never have questions, but it means your questions don't paralyze you. You move even when you don't have every detail, because clarity isn't about certainty. It's about confidence in who is leading you. When He's first, your steps are ordered, your time is intentional, Your energy is focused. You're not running in circles. You're walking in purpose. You don't have to know the whole map when you trust the one who drew it. Faith leads to favor, not just effort, as it helps us. This is a principle that breaks the grip of performance-driven living and releases you into a life of supernatural flow. So many people are taught that the only way to succeed is through constant grinding, relentless striving, and never-ending hustle. And while there's value in discipline and consistency, effort alone is not what unlocks the kind of favor that shifts seasons, opens impossible doors, and accelerates purpose. It's faith that triggers favor. Faith is the currency of heaven, and without it, you're just working in your own strength. Effort is natural, but faith is supernatural. Effort gets you what you can earn, but faith gives you access to what only God can release. Faith is not wishful thinking or empty hope. It's the deep-rooted belief that what God has spoken will come to pass, even when there's no evidence in front of you. It's trusting his timing, even when you feel late. It's believing in his promise, even when the process is painful. Faith is what positions you for favor because it aligns your life with expectation instead of anxiety. When you operate in faith, your posture changes. You stop begging and start believing. You don't live from a place of lack. You live from a place of trust. You're not moved by what you see because you're anchored in what you know. And that kind of faith invites favor. Favor isn't something you earn like a paycheck. It's something you receive by walking in alignment with God's will. It's divine influence on your behalf, causing things to happen that effort alone could never produce. Favor will open doors your resume can't. It will put your name in rooms where you haven't yet stepped. It will align you with people, resources, and opportunities that you didn't even know to pray for. But favor is not random. It's connected to faith. When you step out in obedience, even when it's uncomfortable, you make room for favor to meet you. It doesn't always show up the way you expect, but it always shows up where faith is present. Effort says, I've got to make this happen. Faith says, God is already working it out. That doesn't mean you sit back and do nothing. It means you move with a different energy. You still prepare, plan, and show up. But you do it with peace instead of pressure. You're not striving to force outcomes. You're trusting that what's meant for you won't miss you. That trust fuels your courage. It allows you to take bold steps, even when there are no guarantees in the natural. Favor doesn't bypass process, but it does bring acceleration. What takes years for others can happen suddenly when you're walking by faith. What seems impossible becomes inevitable, not because you figured it out, but because you followed the prompting of the Spirit. Faith doesn't make things easy, but it does make them possible. And favor is the evidence that God is breathing on your obedience. People will often try to reverse the order. They'll work endlessly and then ask for favor as an afterthought. But favor flows from faith first, not effort first. God honors faith. He responds to those who trust him over trends, who obey even when it costs them something, who believe even when there's no visible proof. That kind of faith doesn't just move mountains, it moves heaven. It draws divine attention. It causes things to align in ways you couldn't orchestrate on your own. When you live by faith, you stop measuring success by effort alone. You begin to measure it by obedience, peace, and fruit. You recognize that your effort matters, but it's not the source of your breakthrough. Your belief is, your trust is. Your willingness to step out when it doesn't make sense is what activates what effort alone never could. Faith gives your effort direction and favor gives it power. Together, They create a life that exceeds human limitation and reflects divine intervention. True success flows from obedience, not from popularity, not from performance, not from applause, and certainly not from self-promotion. The world defines success by how much you accumulate, how visible you are, how many people follow you, or how high you climb. But real success, lasting, fulfilling, purpose-driven success, has always been tied to one thing: obedience to God's voice, God's plan, and God's timing. That kind of success may not always look flashy, but it is solid, it is secure, it is unshakable. Obedience isn't always easy, but it is always rewarded. It doesn't always make sense at first, but it always leads to alignment. Sometimes obedience will cost you comfort. Sometimes it will cost you control. But it will always position you for what you were created to do. It's not about blind submission. It's about trusting the one who knows the blueprint for your life better than you do. It's about choosing purpose over preference and mission over momentary convenience. There are people who appear successful on the outside, but are empty on the inside because they reached the top of a mountain God never told them to climb. They have recognition, but no rest. They have status, but no satisfaction. That's what happens when you chase success without obedience. It's easy to look successful by the world's metrics and still be far from your assignment. But obedience ensures that you're building what matters, not just what's marketable. Obedience is the pathway to clarity. It's often in taking the first step, even when it's uncomfortable. That God reveals the next one. He doesn't give you the whole map up front. He gives you enough light for the next move. As it helps, and it's entrusting him with that move, that doors begin to open. Opportunities begin to align. Strength begins to rise. Obedience sharpens your hearing. The more you obey, the more clearly you hear. The more clearly you hear, the more confident you become in your direction. Obedience doesn't require that you understand the full picture. It requires that you trust the painter. It's not about having all the answers. It's about having the courage to say yes when God speaks. Sometimes that yes will lead you to unknown places. Sometimes it will ask you to let go of something you've been holding on to. Sometimes it will stretch your faith, test your patience, and challenge your comfort zone. But it will never leave you empty. It will always lead to growth, purpose, and eventually fulfillment. When you obey, you release control. You say, I trust God more than I trust my own ability. That surrender becomes the foundation for supernatural results. Because now you're no longer working for approval, you're working from identity. You're no longer striving, you're flowing. You're no longer reacting, you're responding. Obedience creates spiritual momentum. It may start with a small act, but it sets off a chain reaction in the spirit that leads to favor, provision, and transformation. Success that flows from obedience often starts in private before it's seen in public. God will test your heart in hidden places before he reveals you in visible ones. He will ask you to be faithful in the small before he gives you stewardship over the greater. And the measure of your obedience in those unseen moments determines your capacity for impact later. It's not about being seen. It's about being sent. And you can't be sent until you've been willing to stay when God says stay, move when God says move, and wait when God says wait. Obedience also cultivates humility. It reminds you that the outcome isn't on you. It's on God. Your role is to follow. His role is to fulfill. You're not the architect of your destiny. You're the steward of his instructions. That mindset frees you from the weight of self-made pressure as it helps us. It reminds you that the greatest achievements are not those that glorify self, but those that reflect the glory of the one who called you. Priority determines provision. What you place first in your life sets the tone for everything else. It's not just a matter of time management or productivity. It's a spiritual principle that governs the flow of resources, opportunities, and breakthroughs in your life. When God is your first priority, everything you need begins to align with divine timing and purpose. But when your priorities are out of order, your life becomes chaotic, your resources get stretched thin, and your peace becomes unstable. Provision flows in the direction of your priorities. Many people live their lives in pursuit of provision without ever examining their priorities. They chase money, status, or security and wonder why they feel drained, lost, or constantly under pressure. The truth is, you can't expect divine provision to show up in places God never told you to go. When you prioritize things over the one who provides all things, you disconnect from the source of true supply. But when you seek first his kingdom, everything else is added. Not earned, not forced, not manipulated, but added. Provision isn't just about finances. It includes strength, peace, wisdom, opportunities, connections, and open doors. It's the grace to do what you're called to do, the insight to make the right decisions, and the favor that makes things happen beyond your natural capacity. And that kind of provision is attracted to the right order. When your priorities reflect heaven's structure, provision comes without the stress of striving. You're not running after it. It's being drawn to your alignment. Priority is not what you say. It's what your actions reveal. You can say God is first, but your calendar, your bank account, and your daily habits will tell the truth. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. If the first thing you consult in a crisis is your budget and not your faith, your priority is showing. If the first thing you cut out when you're busy is prayer or time in the word, your priority is showing. Provision follows those who put God first, not occasionally, but consistently. Provision is also connected to stewardship. When you prioritize God, you become a better steward of what he gives as it helps us. You recognize that your resources are not your own. They're entrusted to you for a purpose. And because you understand where they came from, you use them with intentionality and gratitude. That stewardship creates space for increase. God doesn't pour more into misaligned vessels. But when your life is in order, when your heart is anchored in the right place, he knows he can trust you with more. There's a peace that comes from knowing you're covered, not because of your hustle, but because of your priorities. You're not afraid of lack because you know your source. You're not shaken by economic shifts because you're rooted in kingdom principles. The world may be uncertain, but your provision is tied to something greater than market trends. It's tied to divine faithfulness. And that faithfulness is unlocked by putting first things first. When your priorities are right, clarity becomes easier. Decisions aren't made out of desperation. They're made from a place of discernment. You're not trying to do everything. You're doing the right things. You're not investing in every opportunity. You're investing where your purpose is leading. That kind of focus multiplies results. You get more done with less stress. You experience growth without burnout. That's the fruit of prioritizing the right way. Provision is not something you beg for. It's something you align with. And alignment begins with priority. What you honor determines what flows into your life. If you honor God first, his provision flows freely. If you honor your calling, your discipline, and your divine assignment, doors begin to open that no man can shut. Prioritizing God doesn't mean neglecting everything else. It means ordering everything else around him It means letting him set the pace, define the goals, and lead the way.